Hi, and welcome to Danny After Dark. If you're new here, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss a notification or a new episode. Tonight, I am back, finally, after 3 weeks, with a true crime case for you guys. So I'm super excited to be back and talk about a case that some of you may or may not have heard of. I did also post a link in the chat, and it is to a live video that we did over on the podcast. We did a video about last week, I believe, that talks about my vacation, which I did go to Canada to visit my co-host Paul and fellow collab Canadian Clay, also known as Fiddleford. And we talk about my trip and all the things I did, as well as my other co-host, Mr. Beckham. He went to LA, so we talked about his trip as well. So if you missed that video and you're curious how my vacation was, go over and check it out. It was so much fun, but I'm really glad to be back on YouTube with you guys. So before I dive into this case, because it's one of those that, yeah, pure evil. Let's see who is here in the chat. So, hey, Mermaid. Hey, Paul. Linda, that's awesome. Usually I get the comments from you after, but I'm so glad you're here. That is so cool. Hey, Kane. Mr. Jinx, Speak of the Devil, Fiddleford. Let's see. James, Nick, Carol, Virginia Wolf, and Troy. Hello, welcome. Hey, Tony, good to see you. What is James piping about? Danny left British Columbia and then it burned basically to the ground afterwards. I cannot confirm or deny that I had anything to do with that, so we'll leave it on that, because I've learned on YouTube what you say can and most certainly will be held against you, and I love that. So, all right, I'm curious, have any of you guys heard of Michelle Knotek, the case that I'm covering tonight? It was featured, oh gosh, so many years ago on the show on Oxygen Snapped, and that is where I first heard about the case. But again, that was so long ago. So I definitely needed a refresher when doing this research. And when I did, I remembered just exactly why this woman is pure evil, but we'll get into all those details. Let's see. Linda said, Danny, I finally learned how to tilt. I think that's awesome. Oh my God, James, that is horrible. Oh my God, that is horrible. Hey, Russell, good to see you. Kane has heard of her. Oh gosh, then you know what's in store. I don't think most people in the chat do. It's one of those cases that I feel like is not extremely well known, but if you've heard about Kane, you already know. Paul said, the other Paul, the better Paul, says, never heard of her. Well, you are certainly about to find. Oh, a lot of people have not. Okay. I have never had best material though. Okay. So, this is one of those cases, we just got to get through it, but let's just go ahead and get started. Let's go ahead and dive on in. Michelle Knotek, also known as Shelley, was born in 1954. She lived in Raymond, Washington, with her husband, David Knotek. Michelle met hairdresser Kathy Lorena, and they quickly became friends. In 1991, Kathy had a fight with her family and moved out of her home. Michelle offering her friend a place to stay. Well, Kathy, she accepted, and she moved in with the Knoteks. Kathy's stay with the Knoteks, well, it was anything but welcoming. She suffered extreme physical abuse from the family. Meanwhile, Shane Watson, who was David's nephew, he also needed a place to stay. So Shane moved in with the Knoteks around 1993. By 1994, Kathy's family, they've reported her missing. When the police interviewed the Knoteks, they stated, well, Kathy, she was in fact living with them, but she ran away with the truck driver and moved to Hawaii. In fact, she told police that she was in regular contact with Kathy. Jeff Loreno, Kathy's brother, he did not believe that for a second. So he hired a private investigator who concluded that Kathy was probably dead at the hand of Michelle Knotek. But no witnesses came forward to the police, so there wasn't much that the police could do. Shortly after, remember nephew Shane? Well, he went missing as well. The Knoteks, they had an answer for that. They claimed that Shane, he ran away to Alaska to work on a fishing vessel. So are you guys picking up a trend here? People tend to come into their home. It's not very inviting. And then they tend to just up and run away. But it's okay, because as we hear, Michelle, she has an answer for both her nephew and her former friend. So let's do a quick pause here and see what you guys are saying in the chat. Is she out of jail? Well, Troy, you're going to have to stay tuned to the end, hon, for that answer. Look at Linda. I have never heard of this chick. I love your bold, let's just put it out there how it is. Let's see. Hey, Captain McDonald, welcome. Did she? Let's find out. I'm just shocked to see Paul here. Paul, you never, ever come into any of my true crime cases, only my true crimes and chills. So I'm actually nervous that you're here, because I'm like, oh shit, if I mess up, I'll get messages as the show's going on. Paul will message me. So I better be in my best behavior. Let's see. You guys behave. Russell, Jim, behave. Let's see. Okay, just catching up, making sure I didn't. How old was she? At this time, she was a grown woman who had daughters who were, I want to say, teenagers at this point. Yes. Linda is on fire Linda is on fire whether she's in the chat or not. Linda's one of those women where she goes, yeah, she leaves her imprint. So even when she's not here and she leaves a comment after the fact, she makes her presence known. Love Linda. Wonder what she did with the bodies and if she had help. The suspense is high. Is it, Wolf? Is it? I know. We will get back into it. Michelle Knotek action figure. Oh my God, that's horrible. Pressure's on Danny. Screw you. This is the jerk that I spent my vacation going to visit. This is the jerk. Unlike Fiddleford, aka Clay, who was a perfect gentleman. And apparently the highlight of all my photos. Paul was a very sort of, yeah. See, Nick, you say the word friends. Oh, that's such a commitment word when it comes to Paul. I don't like to go that far and make that claim. But, you know, let's see. You're always on at dinner time. Well, that's not my problem. There's a time zone difference. Time zone difference. Love you, Linda. Let's see. Okay. All right. I know the suspense. So where did we leave off? 2 supposedly missing people that clearly, according to Michelle, just up and ran away. Well, in 2001, Ronald Woodworth, a local man, he went to live with the Knoteks as well. He also endured extreme physical abuse. Other people described seeing Ronald being forced to do chores outside, wearing only his underwear. They also observed him jumping from the 2nd-story roof onto gravel, wearing nothing on his feet, causing broken bones and severe lacerations. They also claimed that Michelle would burn Ronald's injured feet with boiling water and pure bleach. In 2003, Ronald went missing. I just have to say, I know different states have different laws and times have changed. I completely understand that. But one thing that really bothered me was this seemed to be, at least in the case here with Ronald, this was not, the abuse he was enduring was not a secret. Neighbors saw and witnessed these things. How did no one call the police? How did nobody request a well-being check. I could not find any research that was done. Not to say it didn't happen, but nothing in the research I found showed that there were complaints by neighbors, complaints by people in the community, so on and so forth. Nothing. That boggles my mind, and especially how that could have been witnessed. And again, it wasn't just one person witnessing this. It seemed to be multiple people and well known. But again, we have another case of somebody going missing. All right, I know I'm going to leave you guys in quick suspense because the story is just about to take a turn. Where are the cats? I don't let them in here on case nights because if they're going to walk across the laptop, I'd rather them do it on a chill. I know. I knew somebody would say, I knew it. I'd be nervous because Fiddle is here. Deanna, I know. Word on the street is Fiddle is so handsome, so cute, etc. It's so hot. I'm trying to think the words that I got. Handsome, cute, and hot. I got all three of those words messaged to me. Yeah, not just by one. Yeah, Fiddle got a lot of compliments. People did, oh, you look like you had a fun trip. Who is that? Who is Clay? Oh my God, so funny. For more of that, go over on to the video that we talk about my trip on over on the podcast because yeah. But you guys who watch my channel, you already know who Clay is because we have done not one, but 2 collabs already. So you guys already are aware of that handsome Canadian treasure. So I've been told. People saw him jump off. Yes. Again, if I saw an elderly neighbor doing that, even if I thought he was doing that, he or she was doing that on their own accord, I would call the police for a well-being check. You know, there are agencies that look out for seniors and come and provide services and do checks if they think there's something wrong. That would have been my phone call. At the very least, even if I didn't suspect abuse at the hand of a family member, that would have been how I would handle it. But again, different state, different laws. I have no idea. But oh my God, James, stop being mean to Fiddle. If I had low standards. Okay. All right. So August 2003, Michelle and David, they were arrested after their daughters went forward to police and they had told them that their parents had tortured and killed 3 people at their farmhouse in the past 15 years. August 20th, 2003. Pacific County prosecutors now suspected Michelle and David Knotek of being involved in the disappearance of Kathy, Shane, and Ronald. They sought blood, hair, and fingernail samples from Michelle and David to help determine whether they poisoned 2 of them who may have died at their home. They also wanted handwriting samples. That is very interesting because we're going to come to find out that handwriting samples are very important in this case. They are being accused of killing 3 people, again, over the past 15 years, torturing and abusing 2 of them to death. The 3rd, police suspected, was shot. Well, investigators, they found correspondence that attributed to the victims that they believe may have been forged. Human remains believed to be Ronald's were discovered in the yard of the Knotek home. Now, police are going to interview Michelle and David, and it's going to take another turn. Let's just see where you guys are in the chat. I know I love leaving these little suspenseful moments. Jet setter Beckham. Yeah, Beckham is not here tonight, and he actually numerous times was very disappointed in the time of this live tonight because apparently it coincides with a Star Wars episode that is just being released. So I sensed the hesitation in his voice, and I just watch your dang Star Wars episode, and then tune into my episode after. See, problem solved. But if he was a good friend, he would watch this live and then watch the Star Wars one after. But it is what it is. I can only fight so much. I mean, when it comes to Star Wars, I know I'm going to lose. Okay. All right. So, David, when he talked to police, how do you think that went? Well, he instantly caved. He claimed that Kathy had died by asphyxiating on her own vomit. However, he did not take her to the hospital or report her death to police because of the physical injuries Kathy had endured in their home. I mean, he would be held culpable for that. David also claimed, and he was very upfront and honest with this, that he was the one that shot Shane with a 22 caliber rifle. He did so because Michelle was enraged that Shane took pictures documenting the abuse of Kathy. David Knotek stated that he burned the bodies of his nephew Shane and of Kathy, and then he scattered their ashes. David, again, just being upfront with police, he later admitted to burying Ronald's body on their property after Michelle told him that Ronald had committed suicide. We're guessing here that David did not believe that was exactly what happened, but he would always do what Michelle told him to do. Well, Michelle Knotek was charged with first-degree murder in the deaths of 36-year-old hairdresser Kathy Loreno, 57-year-old Ronald Woodworth. The Pacific County Deputy Prosecutor stated that Michelle, quote, showed extreme indifference to human life, end quote. She pled not guilty. David Knotek, he was charged with first-degree murder in the shooting death of his nephew, 19-year-old Shane Watson. According to court affidavits, Shane was killed because he had documented the abuse of Kathy with photographs, as we had previously stated. David Knotek did not enter a plea. And I find that fascinating because he was extremely upfront with police about everything, which you typically don't see that often, especially because one would expect that he would try to protect Michelle, which is what he seemed to do on the outside. Anything she needed done or wanted done, he would instantly do. But in front of police, no, he completely caved. But then chose to not enter a plea. I'm guessing that that's from the advice of his attorney. I mean, we see that numerous times where people plead, not guilty or enter no plea when they've completely admitted to police the crime that they did. So I'm kind of surprised, kind of not surprised. I think it was more so his attorneys, advising him of that. But what do you guys think about that? I was more shocked how upfront he was to police about all three of the murders. And also the daughters, where do they come into play in this? Because that is not over as well. But quick pause in that. And let's just see where you guys are in the chat. So I'm going to answer any questions you guys have about the case so far, because it seems a lot of you didn't know this case, which is pretty cool. Yeah, I will do wrenches. I typically do that on my True Crime and Chill when I just have more time in the chat. I only have the one YouTube StreamYard open right now, so I can't do that. But thank you for pointing that out. Let's see. Okay. All right, James and Russell just going back and forth. You guys are so adorable, so adorable. Okay. So where were we? David Knotek, he entered no plea. So Michelle Knotek decided to later change her plea. And she entered into an Alford plea. For those who don't know what that is, because we've seen that actually in other cases that I've covered, it means she did not admit responsibility, but would acknowledge that the prosecutor's case against her, that there was enough evidence for them to get a conviction. So that is, in a nutshell, the Alford plea. So she ended up pleading guilty to one count of second-degree murder and one count of manslaughter under that Alford plea. She was convicted in 2004 of the second-degree murder and manslaughter in the torture and deaths of Kathy Loreno and Ronald Woodworth. She was sentenced to 22 years in prison. Michelle Knotek later tried to have her convictions overturned, but her appeal was denied by Washington Court of Appeals. She was released, you guys, on November 8th, 2022. So not even a year ago. David Knotek, he was convicted of the murder of his 19-year-old nephew, Shane Watson, He was sentenced to a 15-year prison sentence. He was paroled in 2016 after serving 13 years. Well, when Michelle was released from prison, needless to say, she served just nearly 20 years. The community was outraged. One person stated, quote, "Evil is among us," end quote. The Knotek's daughter, well, multiple daughters, where are they now? They communicate with David, but not with their mother, Shelley. They believe and have been very vocal that any contact with her may endanger them and their families. That is the case of Michelle Knotek. So thank you guys for sticking around for another episode of Danny After Dark. All right, you guys, do you have any questions or comments about this case? One thing that really stood out to me with this, and we've seen this in other cases, is where somebody has a certain image to their community. You know, here we have this family taking in multiple people in the community and other family members, which appear to give a certain type of image. However, little do these people know they're entering into a house of horrors. And again, we see person after person after person go missing from this household. And the police either aren't putting two and two together or don't have enough to actually make a formal charge. So it's interesting that finally the daughters came forward to police. That I found fascinating, that the daughters, I believe they were terrified of their mother. And I think that shows because they believed any communication would endanger them and their families. That is wild. The one person, your mother, who you would think is there to love and protect you, they fear the most. And it's just so, so tragic. And you guys can actually look up photos of Michelle Knotek, and there are pictures with her and the victims. And, you know, they're close to each other and smiling, laughing, having a good time. When in reality, there was so much horrible, horrible things going on behind the scenes. And poor Shane, documenting it ultimately cost him his life. And that is so tragic, so tragic. But that is my 2 cents on that case. But let's see what you guys have to say. Okay, let's see. Linda says, I really hate to see anyone abuse anyone ever. Absolutely. Absolutely. There's no situation where it's okay. But yeah, seeing this, especially in this episode where the people she and her family are supposed to be caring for are very vulnerable people. And, you know, thinking of Ronald, I mean, the things he endured. And again, that neighbors knew and saw. That still blows my mind. That blows my mind. But rant over. Let's see. It's Danny After Dark with the bug. Okay. Let's see. I think I'm a little bit behind, but I just want to make sure I'm not missing anybody's comments. Oh my God, Paul is so mean. You know what? I'm sorry that I'm covering a case that I actually do research on. Sorry, Paul Cass. We all just can't show up on camera last second and look like you do on camera. This is not the one I thought it was. Sorry. No, Kane, I realized that when you said she killed herself in her cell. I was like, yeah, Kane has the wrong case. But I don't want to let her know that right away. But no, that's fine. That's fine. This is still a horrific case nonetheless. So, I mean, you know, that sentiment is completely right. Let's see, that's so adorable, honestly. So sad. Yes, I'm not sure what the adorable comment was in reference. I know you weren't referencing about the case. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. She was apparently a good manipulator. Yeah, And we see this time and time again she is not the only killer that I've covered or that I will cover. There are so many more. Again, that, John Wayne Gacy, pillar of the community, and yet look what happened behind closed doors. So it's interesting. It's very interesting how they're portrayed one way, how they want you to see them, but it's the furthest thing from the truth. Absolutely, Wolf. Well said. Wow, Michelle Knotek is a redhead. I'll have to start writing her statement. Well, she is out. So, James, you might finally have your chance at love if you play your cards right. Let's see. I mean, you said it, not me. That Wookiees are cute. I would say you're a Wookiee, though. Let's not insult the Wookiees. I didn't know she existed, Russell. I find all my new female pen pals through Danny After Dark. James, I actually wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised. On the podcast when we did the herpestophilia episode, there are websites where you can write to male and female inmates. And if she was still on the inside in jail, I'm sure you could find her and write to her, but she's been released less than a year ago. But sorry. Otherwise, yeah, you could write to her, I'm sure. Let's see. Okay. All right. I know. Anytime you throw in that name, John Wayne Gacy, gosh, but that's just a name of a case that I think is so well known. Everybody knows that name. But again, that's what he portrayed to the community. So he didn't take in people to live with him. The crimes itself were different. But again, that putting that image out was pretty similar. So, and wanting to help others, which, ended up costing people their lives, a lot of people their lives, which is very unfortunate. One thing that's interesting too that we didn't really touch upon in the chat is David Knotek. So it's very interesting that he went along with this. You think that there's boundaries, and the first murder, Kathy Loreno. Now Kathy is now deceased. And Michelle is telling David, you need to shoot your nephew. You need to kill your nephew. And he does. I think David was in extreme fear of his wife, Michelle. And I think part of it also is, he would go down. Shane had evidence and documentation, and David would go down as well. But I think, just my opinion, I think David feared his wife, Michelle, more than he feared punishment. Because if you think about it, when he got interviewed by police, he caved. And that was surprising, kind of very surprising. Because he could have made his daughters out to be a liar, and he didn't. So I think that was, I hate to say a redeeming thing he did, because nothing in this, he was complicit. He was absolutely complicit for all of this. But that was the one where it's like, all right, he gave the police what they needed. So that was his one positive moment in this case to me. Other than that, complicit in everything. Let's see. I wonder what her diagnosis is, why she would do this. If you watched on Oxygen, the Snapped episode, it's probably on YouTube. They deep dive a lot more into her growing up and, their ideas of why she does what she does now. I try not to cover that here because I don't want to. It's one thing for me to give my opinion of here's what I'm seeing, here's what I'm reading, here's my thoughts, but to kind of get into back and forth of psychologists say this, and then there's a polar opposite of that. I try not to get into that, but if you do watch the Snapped episode, you'll get a little bit more insight. But again, you have the prosecution saying one thing, the defense saying another. Where do you end up? I don't know. My own opinion on it, I don't think too much of it was mental illness. I think she got off on power and control. She specifically, think of the people that she targeted. A friend who had some physical needs that she was able to take advantage of. A 19-year-old kid. She was a 19-year-old, it's just a kid. And then Ronald, who was clearly an elderly man. She didn't target people who I think would be able to fight back. Think about it. Ronald didn't fight back. Look what happened to him. Kathy didn't either. I think they knew to not cross. The Snapped episode really goes into this, but the punishment for going against Michelle would have been worse. She preyed on people she could take advantage of, and that is disgusting, and that is sick. But let's see. I see the name Dorothea Puente, and I'm wondering where you got Dorothea Puente was a bad landlord too. To say a bad landlord's pretty much the understatement of the year. But Troy, excellent example, portraying to the community that she's doing this wonderful thing, taking in these people who need a place to stay, get them on their feet, and meanwhile she was murdering them and burying them in her backyard. Okay, but yep, another example. Because before her crimes were figured out, people had nothing but good things to say about Dorothea. So, excellent example, Troy, excellent. Let's see, James. I'm always afraid to see what you put up because half the time I think it's like a good comment. In reality, you're just screwing around. So what is she up to now? I don't exactly know. The articles that I found were more of the community being outraged than referring to where Michelle is now. But I'm sure with some deep research, people can find where she is. That didn't really interest me much to find out. She's living on this street in this, in this city, in this state. Doesn't make a difference to me. But what I found is that, yeah, the daughters are still, they were in fear for while she was still in prison, let alone she's out now. I can't even imagine, because think about it. They came forward to the police and they helped put their mother in jail. So yeah, let's see. Just want to make sure I get to all of your comments. Sacramento. Yeah, Dorothea Puente was in Sacramento, California. She is a predator. They're not always men. Absolutely, Linda. Absolutely. And I think that's what makes it more shocking is when it's a woman. And I feel like when it comes to true crime, like nothing surprises me anymore. And I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing because I'm kind of pretty desensitized to it all. But I've just come to the realization of there's no stereotypical, if you will, what's the word I'm trying to look for? There's no stereotypical offender, whether it's serial killer or somebody that just commits one or two homicides. There's no rhyme or reason to anything. So I've just let that go. But it makes sense that when things are a female still, it does kind of shock the community because it's not what is the norm and it's not what is expected. So, you're absolutely right with that. Let's see. Okay, you guys are talking about John Wilkes Booth. No idea the connection, but that's totally okay. All right, you guys, so I'm going to wind things down. But again, that is the case of Michelle Knotek. So if you guys are watching this and you weren't able to catch it live, if you have any questions or comments on the case, of course, leave it in the comments. Other than that, I will let you guys know what night this week I will be doing the True Crime and Chill. I believe it will be Friday, but I just have to double check. I have one thing kind of tentatively planned. So it'll either be Friday or Saturday. That I can tell you for sure. And yeah, last week was a very interesting, legit, just chill. And I had Mr. Beckham with me. This week we'll be back to my normal format of True Crime and Chill. And there's a lot of updates on cases that I want to talk to you guys about. So I really look forward to that. But thank you everybody for joining me again for another episode of Danny After Dark. And until next time, remember, we don't live in darkness. Darkness lives in us. Bye, everyone.